surge of reports like these.
The last thing the American people need in the middle of this pandemic is criminals trying to take advantage of them and profit off their concerns.
And a warning from the White House. President Trump signed an executive order Monday to prevent price gouging and hoarding of medical supplies.
If you have a big supply of toilet paper in your house, this is not something you have to worry about. But if you are sitting on a warehouse with masks, surgical masks, you will be hearing a knock on your door.
As for that executive order, once something is designated as scarce, like surgical masks, if anyone is caught hoarding, it would be a crime. Kenneth and Mona, back to you.
Thank you, Andrea. Coming up, the debate over whether we can reopen the U.S. economy during this health crisis.
Also, new details on why there's such a shortage of medical masks and the shocking prices we found.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
Your mom said, comb your hair. Your dad told you, smarten up. Your dog is judging you right now. And your best friend just called you crazy. We all need someone who'll pull no punches and give it to us straight. Now imagine getting your news like that. No bull, no spin, just give it to me straight. Straightforward news, straight to the heart of the story. ABC News, straightforward.
Good morning, sunshine.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm grateful you woke up this morning.
Good morning, sunshine.
Good morning, sunshine. We've been waiting for you. Say good morning. Good morning, sunshine. America. Say good morning. I want you to wake me up.
The Americans here on the ground and the Iraqis. 18,000 tons. Batatas. Ismail? David.
For ground zero from Hurricane Michael.
You can see just home after home.
David, fix the matrix.
This was your view.
My favorite view. Thank you. Thank you.
Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True Crime 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC. ABC News. Straightforward.
Back now with a video posted by Joanne Fabrics and Craft Stores. It offers a step-by-step guide on how to make a face mask. The craft chain says it will collect all the masks made and donate them to hospitals.
And we have new details on what's behind the mask shortage. China, which was shut down for weeks, they're the biggest producers, and shipping anything from China still remains a challenge. But a growing problem is the raw material for surgical masks, which is being sold at inflated prices up to 20 times the normal cost. And we turn now to President Trump's new push to restart the economy.
He wants to do it in a matter of weeks instead of months. Earlier, I spoke with Dr. Imran Ali. I asked him if that's possible or if it's too early to loosen travel restrictions.
Basic epidemiology says that right now we are not at the level where we can safely remove all the restrictions of social distancing. If you look at South Korea, on January 20th, both South Korea and the United States both identified their first patient with COVID disease, but the testing has been much more prevalent in South Korea.
What's the danger here if we reopen too soon?
Well, we're going to see that people are going to be asymptomatic carriers, spreading the virus to other people, and we will not be able to control the amount of clusters we see around the country, and then we will just overwhelm the health system. We need to understand who has recovered from the virus, who has become now what we call immune and less likely to be reinfected. And the hope is now that maybe we can get this serum antibody test, which will be really critical in understanding, who are these people who have already been infected and who have now built an immunity to the disease. And those would be the ones who would be safe to probably start working again.
The president's coronavirus task force says it's been learning and getting data from other countries. So what can we learn from South Korea, which had COVID-19 hospitals only? It also sent out text alerts warning people of hotspots. Should we be doing any of this?
The virus really thrives in areas like the emergency room and urgent care centers. Italian doctors just spent a time seeing this, and they wrote a letter to the New England Journal of Medicine explaining how we need to take a community health approach instead of having centralized everybody just coming in and mixing in these areas. So yes, there should be a separate treatment unit for these patients. And now we are starting to see some health systems dedicate a certain wing or a certain part of the ICU to treatment of these patients.
Our thanks to Dr. Ali, who also mentioned that South Korea had success fighting the virus because they were already producing medical masks at a much faster rate than the U.S. That's because South Koreans often wear them due to air pollution.
If you need to see a doctor during this health emergency, there's a new, safer option. Medicare has now expanded its coverage to include the cost of telehealth. This allows millions of people to get a doctor's advice from the comfort of their own home. It also helps keep sick patients away from healthy people.
There's never been a better time to start to think about telehealth and telemedicine. It was underfunded in the past, but hopefully this is an opportunity that it gets the funding that it deserves. And what we'll see from this is it's a resource to provide infection control, but also give these folks the medical attention that they need from the comfort of their own homes.
The DEA is also allowing controlled substances to be prescribed via video link.
Coming up, a virtual wedding.
Plus, a wrestling match in the time of social distancing. We'll be right back.
Good morning, sunshine.
Good morning. Good morning. Oh, I'm grateful you woke up this morning.
Good morning, sunshine.
Good morning, sunshine. We've been waiting for you. Say good morning. Good morning, sunshine. In America. Say good morning. I want you to wake me up.
What's the most innovative daily news podcast out there to listen to every day? Well, the Edward R. Murrow Awards say it's Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. Even the New York Times calls us a top news podcast worth listening to. So if you like getting behind the biggest news stories of the day, inside all the details, the backstory, and what will happen next, then listen to Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. It's like no other news podcast out there. Even the critics agree. Listen free on Apple Podcasts.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
What you're seeing right now, this is part of the eye wall. This procession of migrants goes back 2 miles.
There is going to be catastrophic damage.
This fire has made a run. You can see those flames shooting up into the sky.
We are on the jam-packed red carpet.
To the right, guys.
So this is the 4th weekend of protest.
Watch ABC News on location for Facebook Watch. ABC News, America's #1 news source. Straightforward news, straight to the heart of the story. ABC News, straightforward. And download the app now and sign up to get important breaking news alerts wherever you are.
Breaking news, context, analysis.
And no shouting. The time is now for ABC News Live.
Get it streaming everywhere, right to you.
ABC News, straightforward.
I'm off the deep end, watch as I dive in. I'll never meet the ground.
Sang it, girl. That's country music's power couple, Garth Brooks and Trisha Yearwood, breaking the internet during their live stream concert last night. No, they actually broke the internet. More than 3 million fans logged on to watch, overloading and crashing Facebook's site. And in Oklahoma, one couple didn't let social distancing guidelines stop them from tying the knot.
The coronavirus forced Kathleen Hope and Steve St. John to cancel their wedding in Tulsa, so they decided to live stream the ceremony on Facebook. Instead of the small 20-guest wedding they had planned, hundreds of their friends tuned in.
And some of our friends have shared it, so it's on their feeds now, and so, yeah.
We got to have a really big wedding that we didn't have to pay for.
The couple says postponing the wedding was not an option. It couldn't wait to be married.
Oh, love to see it.
And teachers are coming up with some creative ways to stay connected with their students.
Yeah, some are holding parades in their cars. The teachers are driving around neighborhoods, honking horns, and waving to their students to show their support.
I love that. And in Colorado, one family is sending the message that we all have to roll with it. They made rolls out of toilet paper, out of the snow, as a way to show solidarity during this crisis.
So that's how the snow gets brown. Basketball players outside New York City found a way to hoop it up while staying healthy. They took to the court in hazmat suits to comply with the statewide lockdown. Ball really is life.
And the virus outbreak can't stop professional wrestling. I call it wrestling. These guys got in the ring for what they called a social distancing match. It included one wrestler throwing himself into a door and breaking it. They also made time for a virtual pin down.
Some people will say it's fake.
They will say wrestling.
Wrestling.
What you know about wrestling?
Probably not much.
Okay.
Except The Rock.
All right, we'll check the top headlines after this.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
Neighborhoods are underwater.
24/7 streaming news source from ABC News. Imagine breaking news, live events as they happen, streaming live, non-stop, straight to you. Imagine instant, incredible access to the most compelling live video.
That's a grenade.
Original, on the edge, breakthrough storytelling from ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, all the most innovative storytellers, all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want, free. And imagine the most celebrated, epic live events and moments, all playing out right before your eyes.
See those flames behind me?
Go there now.
Put this fire out right now.
With ABC News Live. Think of it as your live streaming adrenaline rush.
Just look at all of the smoke here.
Real, raw,
Welcome
live.
to the Columbus Zoo.
No matter where the next step takes us, we're taking it.
It's frightening.
And go deeper inside the groundbreaking exclusives from the campaign trail only ABC News gets. Behind the scenes, exclusive access.
Take you inside for an extraordinary tour here on ABC News Live. This is it.
It's time to go there, be there, experience it, live on the scene. Maybe that's why, in just 1 year, ABC News Live is already America's #1 live streaming news. And imagine this, it's free. Watch ABC News Live right now and anytime, streaming on Roku, Hulu, Facebook, and abcnews.com.
ABC News Live.
Streaming everywhere, right to you.
ABC News, straightforward.
Checking the top headlines, President Trump is looking to reopen the country within weeks, not months. He's considering lifting travel restrictions and getting shuttered businesses back up and running, despite the objections of healthcare experts. Meanwhile, more than 20 states are now closing non-essential businesses or issuing stay-at-home orders. The U.S. death toll is now more than 550 people.
The Senate appears ready to approve a $2 trillion economic package to ease the financial impact of the pandemic. A second attempt to advance the bill failed Monday, but both sides say they expect to reach a deal today.
Some hospitals are now banning birth partners from delivery rooms. Doctors say it protects the mother and the baby during the coronavirus outbreak, but critics say the ban goes too far.
Today's weather: rain along the northwest coast, up to 2 feet of snow inland, some snow in the upper plains, severe storms in the deep south, and the northeast begins drying out.
And finally, while so many of us practice self-isolation, that means no trips to the hair salon or the barbershop.
Well, Gans has advice from the guy who tried and epically failed at cutting his own hair in quarantine.
With salons and barbershops closed, influencers are offering at-home haircut tutorials.
There's one simple step and you can do it in the very comfort of your own home.
They make it seem so easy, and for regular people, it's just not like that.
Oh, we're bleeding, fam.
I had no idea what I was doing. I was just running it through the back of my head, and it turned out horrible.
Matt Ellenstock didn't even make it a week in quarantine before taking his hair into his own hands.
You okay?
Nope.
Good.
Documenting the hair-raising ordeal on social media.
We lost him here.
So if you too are gearing up to give yourself a snip, here are the hair do's and don'ts from the experts and from Matt. Snip tip number 1. For the most part, you should wet or wash your hair to make sure it's sitting flat while you cut it. Next up, use tools actually made for cutting hair, which Matt did not.
I used what I usually use to trim my facial hair, and I just went for it on my head. And again, do not suggest doing it.
If you're going to give yourself a trim, fellas, use actual hair clippers and trim at a higher number than you think you want. Next up, and maybe most importantly, ask for help. You can FaceTime your barber or stylist for a consult, and if you have a roommate or a family member around, put them to work. Again, Matt didn't.
Here's the thing, you get to a point where you're like, oh, this is going real bad, it can't get worse, but it can.
One final tip, drape a towel over yourself during the cut for easier cleanup. By the way, how steady are your guys' hands? Papa might need some help sometime soon, Kenneth and Mona.
Oh, Will, you need to protect that hairline. And ladies, don't let a $5 box turn into a $500 salon visit.
Oh, there you go. So that's some good tips right there.
I got it from Kenneth Moten himself.
That's what's making news in America this morning. Breaking news in America this morning. More cities and states across the country issue new orders to stay at home, shutting down non-essential businesses amid a grim new milestone in the coronavirus emergency. The one-day death toll in the U.S. topping 100 for the first time.
But this morning, a new push by President Trump to reopen the economy.
America will again and soon be open for business, very soon, a lot sooner than 3 or 4 months that somebody was suggesting.
The president saying America will be open for business in a matter of weeks. But is that possible? We hear from the experts.
Plus, we take you inside the crisis playing out right now in New York, a convention center being transformed into a massive hospital, where we're learning about the much-needed shipments of medical supplies.
And the new hot zone, why New Orleans is now a major concern.
All the overnight developments right now on America This Morning.
From ABC News in New York, this is America This Morning.
Good Tuesday morning, everyone. President Trump is vowing to open our country again, saying he wants to end restrictions on Americans sooner rather than later.
But in some areas of the country, that seems like a very distant goal. At least 21 states are now ordering people to stay at home, or they're closing non-essential businesses. Washington and Hawaii are the latest states to announce restrictions, and Atlanta is among the new cities announcing a stay-at-home order.
And look at this. Images from across the country are like nothing we've ever seen. Freeways in LA almost empty. The terminals at LAX airport, no one in sight.
New York City has 35% of all the coronavirus cases in the country. The governor says hospitals have about 10 days before they start running out of supplies.
Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, the Senate has once again failed to pass an economic stimulus package. ABC's Inez de la Catera begins our coverage from Washington.
President Trump hinting he wants to reopen the economy despite objections from health experts, even though many are predicting the peak of the crisis has yet to come.
America will again and soon be open for business, very soon, a lot sooner than 3 or 4 months that somebody was suggesting.
The president's comments coming as New York Governor Andrew Cuomo suggested the pandemic could last up to 9 months. Cuomo on CNN firing back.
By the way, if you have to make that choice, it's public health, all right? Because you cannot put a value
on a human life. And nobody cares how long it takes to get the economy up and running if you actually saved lives.
Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick said on Fox he agrees with the president.
Let's get back to work. Let's get back to living. Let's be smart about it. And those of us who are 70 plus, we'll take care of ourselves, but don't sacrifice the country.
On Capitol Hill, negotiations over that $2 trillion stimulus package hitting a roadblock.
This is not a juicy political opportunity. This is a national emergency.
Democrats are pushing for more restrictions on corporate bailout money and arguing the bill doesn't do enough to help families, healthcare workers, and hospitals. Republicans say Democrats are playing politics.
Is there objection?
Thank you, Mr. President.
I object.
This,
I object. The Democratic leader
this
objection
is unbelievable.
You know what the American people are thinking right now, Mr. President? They're thinking that this country was founded by geniuses, but is being run by a bunch of idiots.
Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin and Democratic leader Chuck Schumer say they're almost done negotiating and plan to reach a deal sometime today. Kenneth and Mona.
Inez, thank you. And there's growing concern about the number of growing coronavirus cases in the New Orleans area. Just weeks after Mardi Gras, New Orleans now has more cases than Los Angeles County, with 9 deaths in 1 retirement home. Louisiana's governor says 2 weeks ago, the state had only 1 confirmed case. Now, it has more than 1,000.
Meanwhile, the U.S. military is now preparing 10 field hospitals for the hardest hit areas. 1 is expected to be ready for Seattle and 1 for New York by Thursday. Officials here in New York City say they could run out of ventilators in 1 week. And now, with the crisis getting worse, the state of Florida is placing travel restrictions on people arriving from both New York and New Jersey. This morning, New York City, now the epicenter of a growing pandemic in the U.S.
This wave is going to crash over our healthcare system. It will crash anywhere from 10 days to 3 weeks.
There's now more than 13,000 coronavirus cases in New York City alone, an increase of 3,000 in 1 day.
Just got off the phone with a new projection model that New York City was seeing double the number of cases every 2.5 days. That can take your breath away. That curve they keep talking about, that we have to flatten the curve, that's not a curve, Christopher. That is a wave. That is a tsunami.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo toured a Manhattan Convention Center, which FEMA is turning into 4 hospitals as medical professionals run low on protective gear.
The burn rate for these PPE equipment is very high. This is just the beginning of this crisis. The number of seriously ill people climbs each day by great numbers.
The White House says the attack rate of the virus is 5 times higher in the New York area. Meanwhile, in New Jersey, the governor is warning that people could be criminally charged for taking part in non-approved gatherings, with possible penalties of a $1,000 fine and 6 months in jail.
We intend to enforce that up and down the state. We have no choice. If we're going to flatten this curve and break the back of this virus, we got to make sure that we stay away from each other.
In a New York suburb, new concerns of a party's guest list becoming super spreaders. According to the New York Times, on March 5th, 50 people gathered for a lavish party at a home in Westport, Connecticut. After leaving and traveling around the country and the world, more than half of the guests tested positive for the virus. And now the governor of Florida is taking drastic measures, issuing an executive order mandating anyone flying from New York or New Jersey to self-isolate for 14 days upon arriving in his state. And today, New York State is beginning trials using an anti-malaria drug. Small studies in China have shown the drug may be effective in fighting the virus.
And the governor of California says his state needs 50,000 more hospital beds. The state is now chartering planes to get medical supplies from China. The governor says they're also looking at hiring 4th-year medical students who are due to graduate in May. And to enforce social distancing, California is now closing all state parking lots to keep people off of beaches and hiking trails. Meanwhile, some disturbing new information about those cruise ships that struggle to contain the virus outbreaks. The CDC says on one ship, the coronavirus survived on surfaces for 17 days after the passengers disembarked. And nearly half of the people who had the virus did not show any symptoms.
Overseas, the British Prime Minister has now banned gatherings of more than 2 people. And supermarkets and pharmacies are the only stores allowed to open. But not everyone's getting the message to stay home. Crowds packed onto this London subway train Monday. One coronavirus patient offered this warning to people refusing to follow the social distancing guidelines.
Please, none of you take any chances. I mean it. Because if it gets really bad, then you're going to end up here.
British police can now fine people who break the new rules.
In Spain, video from an overwhelmed hospital shows patients on the floor with nowhere else to go. Spain has reported 460 deaths from the coronavirus in the last day.
Meanwhile, from Italy, some encouraging news amid the tragedy. Although the death toll in that country has now topped 6,000 people, doctors are seeing a slight slowdown in new cases.
And we have much more coverage ahead, but right now let's take a look at your weather for this Tuesday. It may be spring, but it looks a lot like winter in northern New England thanks to some new snow, but rain is on the way, so it won't last long. Looking at the radar, most of that storm system is now hugging the coast, and further south you can see all that rain. Some of it will be heavier. Checking today's high temperatures, Boston hits 54, Chicago and Detroit will reach the upper 40s, so will Seattle and Portland. Atlanta tops out at 73, 51 in Minneapolis, 52 in Kansas City, 64 in Los Angeles.
Coming up, the company is now looking to hire thousands of new workers.
Also ahead, the shocking way the crooks are trying to scam people out of big money during this health crisis.
And later, the creative way some teachers are staying in touch with their students.
In times like these, the news-making events happen here. ABC News.
President Trump meeting face-to-face with one of the world's most brutal dictators, Kim Jong-un.
The president.
You trust him? I do trust him, yeah. I think he trusts me, and I trust him.
Ivanka Trump.
I have to ask you about your emails. Your father had taken Hillary Clinton to task for this.
There just is no equivalency.
So the idea of lock her up doesn't apply to you?
No.
Comey.
How strange is it for you to sit here and compare the president to a mob boss?
Very strange.
Michelle Obama.
What do you wish you could tell your pre-White House self?
Whew. Melania Trump.
Do you think there's still people there that he can't trust?
Yes.
Still working now?
Yes.
Michael Cohen.
So he's still lying?
Yes.
It's a big statement.
And now, in a year with so much on the line, we're right there.
Good evening tonight from Washington, a very busy news night.
America's #1 news source, ABC News, straightforward.
We all need someone who'll pull no punches and give it to us straight. No bull, no spin. Now, imagine getting your news like that. Just give it to me straight. ABC News, straightforward.
Can you tell us your full name for the record?
Jeffrey Edward Epstein.